We are Greg and Leah, the host of Evolve, the #1 podcast about relationships, and not just the tender or toxic romantic ones, but all kinds of relationships with many people, places, and paths.
We aren't here because we know or understand it all, simply because we are working to evolve and asking others to join the evolution.
So join us in this next episode of Evolve.
Welcome back to another episode of Evolve. We are picking up part 2 with Jennifer and Ryan with Mercury Coach. I am Leah.
I am Greg.
And let's just dive back in, because if you are as interested as we are of what this topic is and how important it is in our lives and as we evolve, you just want to get right back into it. So Jennifer, you wanted to pick up on something that I left off with on episode 1. You want to share what that was?
Yeah, so you talked about, I don't remember the reference of who said it, but this idea that you come in liquid and then you harden, right?
Yes.
In your life. And this sort of rigidity. And something that what we've realized is that you come in and there is an essential nature. Like, we have an essence that is distinctly and uniquely us. And then there's all of this stuff that begins to form that's not us. Things from the outside, other people's values, other people's beliefs, other people's stuff, society's structure, and I'm not saying that it's all a bad thing. We need it. Otherwise we'd be like, to use that liquid metaphor, we just run out all over the place, right? We need some constraint.
Good point. Yes.
But a lot of it ends up being very limiting in a negative way and very dysfunctional. And there's all of this not us that begins to accumulate. And Ryan had said in the first episode, he talked about this idea that you don't have to learn how to hold boundaries. You don't have to learn to take care of yourself and go for what you want.
Sure, right.
You actually have to get rid. You knew how to do this coming in. You knew how to love. Mm-hmm. You knew how to trust. You knew how to connect. You knew how to be present. You knew all of this stuff coming in. We still know how to do all of it. There's nothing we need to learn. What we need to do is we need to remove the stuff that we unlearned or untaught ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like a crust of stuff. And when you begin to take it away, all this stuff that isn't actually us, what happens is it's like these bursts of beautiful light just start shining through all of this crust that's been built up.
Yeah.
And we suddenly know how to do it, and we don't even have to effort.
I love that you're saying this, because what you don't know about me, Jennifer, it's so funny. I mean, we don't know each other in person. We've only got to meet like this, but is when I started going through my own trauma and healing recovery. And Greg and I would have to say, like, if you can agree or disagree, but like, we've had to learn a lot of stuff on our own the hard way and just like through hard knocks. Like, if we could have hired you like, 10 years ago, we would have been so much further ahead. Right? But like 4 or 5 years ago, when I started going through my own deep recovery and asking these questions, which I didn't have this roadmap. So I love that you're giving this out here. I built myself a logo. Like, it's the weirdest thing. I don't know why. Like, I built myself a logo, and it was called Flower Girl Rescue, because I just love how you said there's us in this like center, and then there's this not us around us. And I started a podcast back then, didn't maintain it because I was going through my own healing and stuff, but it was called Flower Girl Rescue. And the whole point was to dive into that center where I knew purity still existed. And I still have this logo today. My son helped me. I drew it and he helped me with the editing part of things. But I love it because you're saying exactly the process that I went through and am still. I don't know if we ever totally arrive. I mean, I'd love you to answer that. Maybe you guys have arrived, because life is still hard sometimes, even when you've done these deep healing, because you might find like in the Flower Girl Rescue, there's another layer. There's another petal that has to come off to get back to that true self. But it's such a beautiful like image that I made for myself. And I love that you're saying this same thing. So it just confirms in my life, like, hey, I accidentally took the wrong path. The right path. I accidentally took the right path in my life to recover and heal, and am still on that journey.
Well, it's really important, Leah, like what you just said. I think everybody I hope can hear this is not like airy-fairy sort of theory. This is the mechanics of your brain.
Right.
Like, your brain has put layers of protection, which weren't always the best modes, but you were young. It did the best it could, and that cement formed around your core self. We can promise people it's there. It's fully there.
Yeah.
And when you chip that cement off, and yes, we've found some things that allow us to do it at a pace that we've never seen before. Like people walk out of a 4-hour session and their behavior is totally different. They feel different to their loved ones.
Yeah.
Like we've had a father who walked away one day and his kids were like, "What the hell happened to you, Dad? Like we hated coming to see you because you were always yelling at us. And now all of a sudden you're just playing with us and you feel so at ease. Like what did you do?"
Yeah.
And that was in an afternoon, you know? And so I just, yes, like everything you said is true. And I want everyone to know this.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we need to get this out in the world is like, you don't need to learn anything. And in fact, trying to learn more techniques, you know, and, you know, there's lots of people that are sharing wonderful things, but some of them are really glass ceilings. You know, if you think that you need to learn how to enforce boundaries, what you're doing is you're allowing your rational mind to try to overcome the pain that's coming up out of the deeper part of your mind.
Yeah.
If we instead erase the pain from the deeper part of our mind, we suddenly have all this energy now free to do other things instead of having to be always managing and compensating.
And I love that you said that we have the energy. Greg and I have used this term before, like when you release some of these, that energy you spent or used, like you said, in that early childhood, it was the best you knew how, it returns to you. Like
That's right.
this energy
100%.
comes back to you.
It's an empowerment that you now have.
Yeah, and now you get to go create with that energy instead of using it just to manage.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these, like all of the worry, all of the negative emotions, these are all these like little threads of energy that are just draining out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you cut one off, like that energy, just like you said, it's like all of a sudden it's just going inward and it's fueling you.
Right.
And also to answer what you said, you know, you said like, oh, is it an ongoing thing? Well, and in many ways, yes. I mean, I see it in like a spiral kind of, you know, but a spiral always moving upwards.
Correct. Yeah.
And so you clear out, when you clear out this stuff, all of a sudden it's like the world's brighter. You can see things you couldn't see. You have access to resources you didn't know you had before. Opportunities suddenly emerge and you expand. And when you expand, you stretch and you run into the next thing that you hadn't run into before.
Yes.
Yeah. And so now you have another thing that you get to, you know, resolve, move through. Really.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, are you guys done addressing things? Because if you are, like, I need someone to look up to who's done this, who's arrived. Because I feel like the more we uncover...
So I think everything we're saying is, you know, it's right. That I don't know if there's a place that you finally arrive to, or if we can expand ourselves infinitely. I really don't.
Yeah.
It's possible, though, that, like, it's not just, you know, you're not just moving through stuff. You're growing, broadening, having more tools and having more energy. And I don't know when that stops.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what we can say is, like, we've gotten to a point where, you know, we're excited about doing this work, and we're like packing up our entire lives, moving a family to Italy, all without any fear. Like,
we have no idea what's going to happen.
We have
no idea where we're going to go.
No idea where we're going to live. We're taking our kids, but we're doing it from a genuine desire to go, to dedicate ourselves to this work in the world. And so I'm leaving a career of 28 years in technology so we can do this, and we want to teach our kids a way of living that we think in Europe there's a lot of just really beautiful, especially in Italy, a lot of really warm and, you know, really inclusive people that just it's just a different culture, and we want them to have it. And as someone said that to me recently, they're like, wow, when you talk about this, everything's about what you're wanting to go create. There's no sense, and you have no clear plan because you know there's so many different ways
variables.
This could play out.
Yeah.
And you're not afraid. You're not afraid of anything anymore.
Yeah.
And so, you know, are we there? We're somewhere amazing. I can say that. At the end of the road.
I like that.
Not.
No, I mean,
I like
the
that.
capacity.
Yeah.
We're always increasing our capacity to create what we want, right?
I like that.
As this energy, this ability to focus, this ability to see and awareness. It's all this creative energy. And, you know, I mean, that's the greatest joy. Like when we're in flow, when we're creating, when we're dreaming and then bringing that dream into reality. And I think that one of the things that has come out of this, and this was part of our journey as a couple, is that we came to this profound mindset shift when we realized that oh my God, I'm so pissed off at him. I'm so mad. I'm so triggered that this is really just a resonance inside of myself. And this is giving me information. This is like, okay, Jen,
yes,
go deal with this. What just happened? What is this? And so it's the challenges themselves are where we get some of our best growth. And yeah, it's crappy going through it. It's really crappy. But when you do and you come out the other side, it's better than it ever was. And what's possible is so much bigger, right? Like our capacity is greater. Our resilience is greater. Our ability to create, to see, to connect, like all of that gets expanded. And so when you realize that, like when you really physically in your body realize that and are connected to that, things just don't matter anymore. Shit happens and you're going to deal with it.
Yes.
And it's okay. And you can laugh about it. Sometimes even in the moment.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, we were just saying this the other day about how, like, when, like, something came up with us and you were saying, Gregory, like, you were able to stop immediately and realize, oh, this is a good signal of maybe what I need to address in myself.
Yeah.
Like you said, something along that lines. And I'm noticing it the more that Greg and I are moving through our own things. And, you know, we talk about it in Evolve a lot. Like, as you, I think you shared the quote, and maybe it was from someone you read years ago. I don't know. But if you want to fix a relationship, you know, 100% of it you can fix yourself. And as you work on yourself, it changes that relationship. I'm totally butchering it. I don't know how you say it. How does it go?
Like, you can change 50% of your relationship by changing 100% of yourself.
That was so much simpler and clearer. But
cool.
yeah.
And I mean, I think we would go even further and say that, you know, the relationship isn't a zero-sum game. Like the way you know your relationship when you're in those conflicted situations is just a fragment of what your relationship could become.
Yes.
You know, so it's like it's amazing how much as you expand. We had a client once. I mean, these kind of stories are amazing. How much we project energy out of our bodies, and that comes from that noise that's in our old memories. Like this woman came to work on her business to expand. She was, you know, knew that she was struggling as an entrepreneur, procrastinating, whatever you want to call it, and we did a bunch of work to unlock that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, she told us just anecdotally, like, oh, my partner and I, we've been together for like a year, and, you know, it's really been rocky for a long time, and I think we're probably going to split up. And after we did this weekend of work with her, she called us a week later and said, my partner just proposed to me. Like, we did nothing with him.
Yeah.
The changes in her body were so palpable to him that she appeared totally different to him.
Oh my gosh.
Like, his experience of her suddenly was just, and I've had this with clients over and over when we're doing work in a professional space, but the deep root causes are affecting our lives in more ways than we know. And like often they'll say, oh, suddenly my partner is way more open with me, is way more gentle, is way more curious. Like my own body, this is 100% true for kids, right? That was going all the way back to the first episode. Our daughter, like, suddenly made huge, what you'd call healing, but it wasn't healing. Like, we just took away so much of the noise from our own bodies that her body was resonating with, that could just go away.
Right. And that's, I mean, it just, I wish, our son is almost going to be, 21 soon? And sometimes I'm like, man, I wish we would have known so much of this at the beginning. Because, like, you know, how do you undo?
Sorry to interrupt, but I have to tell you this. This process will solve the problem for anyone, and that's the thing to be hopeful about is your brain isn't static. It's happy to unwind all this stuff. And so that's one of my dreams, is to really work with young people like your son, right? Because if we can unlock some of the things that inevitably happen, you know, there's nothing we can do as parents to be perfect. Because even if we were perfect, there are situations in life that that the young child's brain will misunderstand, and it will create its own limitations.
Sure.
You know, people joke and they say, "Oh, tell me, how do I not fuck up my kids?" Excuse my French. And I say, you can't help it, because their own minds are doing it to themselves.
Right.
You know, and that's okay. So the process gets them out of it, and I think that's the exciting thing for me, is to really, over time, I want to shift work to younger people as well, because wow, imagine, like, I know what my life was like and how long I went playing the wrong game, playing somebody else's game, and not playing the game I was here to play. And, you know, I would love to give everyone the gift of, like, really being in contact with that authentic self and being that self fully in the world from the time they're in their 20s, or their teens even.
And before, I would say even teens. I mean, I've been a very emotional, spiritual, like Jennifer, in the first episode, you were saying how, not everybody can hear that inner voice or that intuition. And I would say, like, I felt like I was born being able to connect and hear that. So when people would tell me they couldn't, I was so confused because I thought it was normal to have that experience. But I still, even as connected as I felt like I was to, that higher self, God, that whatever you want to call it, that I still built so many stories that have not served me. And thank you, Ryan, for that, liberating what you said. Like, it was very liberating for me of like, what, it's okay. And I love that you said this. The brain is happy to unwind it. No matter where you're at, no matter where your kids are at, it can start now.
Absolutely.
It's super supporting and encouraging.
Yeah, and I really, one of our missions is to just, it is hopefully empowering for people to realize just how powerful their mind is and just how complete that real self is still in you. It's just covered up.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so exciting because to your point about evolving, what I think we've discovered, what we've discovered effectively at this point, I can't say think anymore. Is that we get to accelerate that process of evolution way beyond what I had ever believed possible. And that's just super exciting.
Yeah. I feel like you guys and what you're doing and what you're sharing and you're experiencing, it like encapsulates what Evolve podcast and what we're
definitely.
Entirely. I mean, and like I said, it's like, I feel like Greg, you and I have just like accidentally stumbled into this realm, into this. And if we had known someone like you guys at the beginning of this process, how much time and energy and effort would we have saved? Because we had to learn this all ourselves. Just by stumbling.
That's learning. The thing is like,
still learning.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. You're fine.
Yeah, no, he was just saying still learning.
Say, like, what's crazy is just how quick it can be. Like, as quickly as the mind forms a belief, it can unform it. It can change it. And so it's like, that's why we're like, well, you can spend years of time. There are paths that will get you there, but most of them take years because you're trying to work in a rational space, and it's sort of like every now and then it'll affect the unconscious. But when we can just do it in like give us 10-15 hours, and then you're done and you can just move on.
Dive to the heart of this.
And you came into this world to do.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh. Like I said, there's so much here that just encapsulates everything. So you guys, in episode 1, you kind of went through the questions that people could ask themselves. I'm also going to make sure that I put that in the description as well in each episode. So that way people can start asking these questions to themselves to start moving forward with this and start evolving through their healing process and their recovering of their true, like, as we said a minute ago, like liquid selves. That, is there any more things besides like these steps that like you want to throw out to the public that you feel like is just crazy important?
Yeah, actually. So when you talk about like your true liquid self, right? We talk about you come in with this energetic thumbprint, right? That's uniquely yours. And understanding so this is the part that's not me, but what is me? And in this process now, I would never in a million years have ever thought that I would find myself saying these words. And yet, because we're so focused on like results and what actually works, we have now discovered that astrology is a thing.
Oh yeah. And that was part of our process too.
Oh my gosh. You're like reading our mail. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. We've done it, but just in maybe a weird order.
Yeah. So we actually use astrology. And, Carl Jung, right? Like, who our celebrated leader in psychology, he says this in one of his books, that the future of psychology is that it will be considered barbaric to do any kind of psychotherapy without the use of astrology. So he got that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it has not become widely recognized. I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
But what we do is we look at your chart And that helps us understand. And we do that with couples too, right? Like you can see like, okay, that's how I can say with such authority, oh, Ryan and I, there are aspects that are just fundamentally incompatible energetically. Right. But you can look at your energetics, you can look at your birth chart, and you can see who are you? And possibly, and I have no way of actually knowing this, but it is very empowering to say this, like, what am I here to learn? And you can see the tensions. You can see where you have opportunities of energy flows, and you can see where you have different challenges that are going to show up again and again. And it's very illuminating. And Ryan has, oh my God, he has put so many hours, such an investment of time. I've really the level of depth that he has and ability to understand this is really inspiring to me. So I'm going to just shut up and let you talk about it.
Are you referring to astrology in general, you mean?
Yeah, but he's a scientific guy. How's that happen?
Yeah, I'd love to hear the connection.
Tell us about that.
Beautifully. You set that up beautifully. So here's the very short version of this, and maybe we'll talk again if we go deeper into this, is, energy is a real thing. Electricity, solar radiation, right? We know energy's real. And, it turns out that all of the major spiritual traditions of the world are actually rooted in the same basic understanding of astrology as a description of how we experience energy. So astrology is not about predicting your future or other things. People will try to do that with it, but it turns into a bit of a circus. But people for 10 to 20,000 years have been observing themselves, and they've been observing the movement of planets, and they've noticed correlations. Remember, we don't know, and no one who's a real astrologer will tell you that we know that Jupiter is making us do something or Mars is making us do something.
Right.
A lot of people misunderstand that. But humans have noticed correlations which were useful at predicting psychological aspects of our personalities for good and bad. And so like Jen said, what I've ended up realizing is that the natal chart really does, the birth chart shows the energetic nature that you're likely to experience at your core. And that's really useful because where there are tensions in your natural energies that are in your body, that often tends to be pretty predictive of where life problems have emerged.
Okay.
But what I think I've come to understand is that if we reincarnate, and again, I really don't know, but I find this so empowering that it's useful anyway. If we reincarnate, many of the ancients believed that the birth chart was basically like a life plan. The tensions in our chart, not the things we do well, but the tensions would be the things we came here to grow and evolve through. And this is a totally different way of understanding astrology.
Yeah.
Possibly, most astrologers will tell you all the things you're good at, and they'll tell you, and you already have those things. But actually, the superpowers in this lifetime come from really leaning into and understanding accurately your energetic nature and the tension that's in you, which when you make it conscious, that tenseness in you energetically becomes your superpowers. And so that's how we use astrology, is to help open people's eyes to, they may have misunderstood themselves. Society may be misunderstanding aspects of themselves that are actually really critical to their growth. And so we have a really in-depth conversation about what the chart suggests the natural energetic experience of the person would be. And often that is amazingly eye-opening to them, often matches their experience of themselves when they were younger. And before life started to teach them some false things.
Okay.
And what's really exciting, obviously, about that is, again, for those who are seeking to know themselves more fully, to understand purpose, the energetics that are shown by astrology can be just a massive unlock. But you need someone who's, like Jen said, I mean, I've spent thousands of hours studying and into the deeper energetics of astrology and not just the superficial stuff. And it's really important to have a competent astrologer to work through this with you. But it can be an amazing complement. What's in our brains now is in our brains, and we can remove that. And that's the methodical thing we talked about throughout the podcast. And then the astrology can be really valuable also as a bigger beacon for where you might want to be going.
So do you do a birth chart then for your client? Like, is that step one? Like, before you even do anything else, after maybe a discovery call or whatever, you dive into the birth chart so you kind of have a ground zero to start with?
The first thing we always do is make sure to get clarity about what the person wants to solve for themselves or evolve for themselves.
Okay.
We start with that. Then we use the astrology as a backdrop if people are open to it. And if they're not, that's fine, because
Okay.
all of them, the procedure we talked about before works perfectly with or without the astrology.
Sure.
But the astrology can add extra layers of insight.
Sure, sure. And so my other question would be for you too. I just had my first birth chart done because that's part of I'm in a coaching academy for life coaching and stuff, and that's part of the package. That's part of what I get with it. It's my question would be: do you think like having multiple sessions with different quote unquote astrologers is helpful, or like just the same person you kind of keep going back to? What's your thought there?
I mean, the biggest problem is that a lot of astrologers that I know are they're not attuned to the deeper energetic nature. They do it intellectually, and a lot I find gets missed when that happens. Astrology is a very technical domain with just reams and reams of different things that people think they can notice. And so I think using different astrologers is potentially valuable. You'll also probably know and feel when you find the one that,
right person.
Everything they say is so resonant for you. Then I wouldn't say necessarily keep looking. Work with your instincts on that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, with this one, I was kind of blown away by some of the stuff because I was not I don't like using tools to predict my future. Like for me, that just feels like someone telling me how it's got to go and has to go. And then it just feels like I maybe manifest it, whether I didn't want to or not, by subliminal messages and whatever. So I don't use things necessarily to tell me my future. But I loved having this most recent one where it was just really connecting me to, like you said, what kind of events happen in childhood? Where's your energy? Where are the tension spots? Where's your weaknesses? How do you work on them? It was way more eye-opening for me, for sure.
That's beautiful. What you said is that's it. It's critical. It's not predicting your future because you have free will, I'm sure of it. And the difference is the energies in you where those tensions exist, they tend to play out and cause challenges in life. And so that's good awareness, but then you have to take action. Right.
Yeah.
And that's how I think astrology should be used, is to have people become more self-aware so they can drive their own growth, which is potentially what your soul was looking to do when it came in.
Yeah. And one of the things that, one of the patterns that I noticed, right, there are these parallels that like the tensions in your chart become your opportunity for superpower. If you can understand how to transform and navigate them. And it's just like the tensions in your relationship can also be your opportunities.
Yeah.
And when you transform that, you become so much more powerful.
I love that. Do you have any questions, Gregory? You're sitting over here really quiet,
just absorbing it. It's amazing. I'm thinking, wow,
I don't think you've ever had a birth chart reading for yourself done. You dove into astrology a little bit in the maybe 3, 4, or 5 years ago, but I don't know if you've had an official birth chart done that would have maybe helped you.
I did
get there faster.
Yeah, I'm analytical in myself, so I did a lot of studying on. Well, at that time I was concerned about flat Earth, so
more conspiracy theories than anything else, and that's where I think it really helps to have Jennifer. I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of the episode as well, when we were talking about that liquid concrete being that comes into this world, that without boundaries, liquid goes everywhere.
Right.
And that's just a great point. I've looked at parents and where we live right now, where we're kind of setting our roots down. We're by a really cute, eclectic, eccentric town, and a lot of hippie kind of vibes, I would say. And we're looking at the children and we were thinking wow, wouldn't it have been cool to have been raised with these kind of freedoms? Because Greg and I come from a very similar, highly religious background that had a lot of boundaries. And completely shapes you in a whole nother way, that you form these concrete beliefs that don't always serve you the best. But we're looking at these children and we're just like, oh my gosh, how fluid and how great. But there is also, if you overswing that pendulum, now you have no boundaries and you are all over the place. So I love that you acknowledged and talked and brought that to the surface, that truth that you can't have no boundaries and no guidelines in your childhood or in your life. There has to be these guide rails for you. So it absolutely is.
Pressure is what gives shape to things. It's what creates time.
Right.
Freedom of time and form.
Freedom is formless, and that's not total freedom is not useful in the real world.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's the opportunity, is to notice if there are boundaries or constraints around you that your body is railing against. Then the opportunity is to understand: are you in the wrong environment? Are there boundaries like you might have talked about in your past? I also was raised religious. There were things there that weren't healthy,
Right.
But there also are boundaries that our bodies react against that are healthy boundaries, or they are healthy constraints, but our body's still reacting against them, and that's our opportunity to grow and become comfortable with those, because those types of constraints are then often become superpowers.
Good point. Yeah. That there are things that it just, eat your veggies. They're good for you, but you don't want them.
Yeah, that's right.
My
That's
next lesson in the book I'm studying talks about putting yourself in discomfort areas on purpose, so that when you get in a discomfort area not on purpose, you're able to handle it better.
Sure.
So
absolutely. And you can introspect if you can come to use some of those questions we gave on the first episode of what's the experience of your discomfort specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Because your what we generally abstractly call discomfort for someone might be hurt, for someone it might be anger, for someone, right? And knowing the difference is how you actually start to track back to deeper awareness in yourself about what is the nature of that discomfort. And that's how you can really start to unpack it quickly.
That just occurred between us recently. We had a bit of we were going somewhere, and I didn't realize I didn't want to go. And what happens is, if I didn't have a voice to say, either you have the space to say, let me find out if I do want to go or whether I don't. And it came back from a childhood. I wasn't allowed to say I don't know as a child.
Beautiful. Yes.
So I located that place after the
discussion and talking it out.
And I went, and I found out that, I was in a position. So my little child self developed an agreeable attitude to everything, so I didn't get in trouble for saying I don't know.
Perfect. Yeah. That's exactly right.
And so I've now set an intention. I'm not going to, I don't know that agreeable child, that programming does not serve me any longer.
That's right.
Now I got to give myself the time to decide whether I do, because if I don't want to do something and then we end up doing it because I was agreeable, I make my inner self makes everything miserable. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing.
Any of us. It's the same for any of us.
And I've realized, let me give myself, as well as others, that space to determine what they really want to do before we can go further.
That's right. I love that you said that too. How about how your inner self then will make things miserable? Like, I think it's important to recognize that our brain is so powerful that it's often playing multiple different objectives at the same time.
And filling in the blanks too.
So you can be resisting a thing and be fighting yourself about resisting the thing all at the same time. And again, those are all just different patterns that have emerged. The brain is like a big sedimentary layer of rock, right? It's you didn't, like, just because you grew up and you learned stuff, you didn't replace your childhood. It's all in there, and now the new things are trying to go one way, and the deep self's trying to go another way, and that's the root of so much of our inner conflict. But we can release all of those old things really quickly, and then that inner conflict just disappears.
That is awesome.
And that's like a perfect place to end our second session here. Of really just tell us again, how can people reach out to you guys? What are the routes to find you?
Yeah, you can find us at mercury.coach. So that's Mercury, like the god.
Yes.
Coach, like a coach.
Nice.
So you will be. Yeah, go ahead. Is there another way other than that you were going to mention?
Well, we're all over the place. We're we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook.
Yeah, yes.
But I think the easiest is probably just go look for us at our website.
There is some great content on YouTube. That's where we're looking forward to producing a lot more that helps to explain a lot of the things we just talked about today.
Oh, it'll be awesome.
How they're really operating, so that people can sort of forgive themselves for knowing that their brain is just trying to do the best it can, and really be able to start to find the deeper roots of things rather than the patterns that we intellectually might think are right but may not be. So YouTube channel is an excellent place to start to dive into.
And what's the YouTube channel called?
Mercury Coach.
Oh, it is. Okay. Wow, that was simple.
guys are keeping it simple, right?
Awesome. Well, and I will also have that in the link in the description as well, so people can just click right and go there. Ryan and Jennifer, thank you guys so much for all of
thank
this
you very much.
information.
Yes.
I feel like you said, if this is something that the world could get out, I mean, that's kind of Greg and I's heartbeat of all of what we do and why we're doing it, is just like asking people to ask themselves to let's evolve, let's go through, let's break this barrier. You used the term glass ceiling a little bit ago of where humanity just can't seem to get past, but we can. We know we can. You guys know that we can. So thank you guys for taking this time out and doing these episodes with us. And I know you're going to make a huge impact in Italy as well as the world. So,
thank you.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thanks so much for having us, and thank you for everything you're doing in the world, because it takes a village of us to move the needle, but we can do it.
You are correct.
You are
yes.
correct,
And thank you everyone who's listening to Evolve. Like, subscribe, comment, and until next time,
Be evolving, people.
be evolving, people.